against traditional blue-white builds, you cannot go down the Pack Rat road because of Detention Sphere. Against a deck like Reid, where he has the deck list, Pack Rat becomes an extremely powerful card. It basically commands a sweeper on its own out of Reid's deck, and you see it doing some pretty serious work right now.
Yeah, right now Jared's swinging, and this is a bait of Azorius Charm. He's going to try to block Mutavault on Pack Rat. He was trying to bait Jared into discarding a card to the Pack Rat. Jared not going to take it. I think he realizes that this land is just that important for Reid that, yeah, he'd trade a rat for a land. That's great.
Right. Jared, you know, trying to trap Jared a little bit there into potentially making a mistake, but at this stage of the game, I'm sure if Jared says, you know, if Reid wants to trade a Mutavault for a rat here, that's fine. The most likely scenario is something is happening, and I'll wait for Reid to take an action.
And if you look at it, this is why Pack Rat is doing a lot of work for Jared. It's not just forcing, what it's doing is it's forcing action from Reid. See, Reid's gonna have to tap here to play the Azorius Charm. When you look at Jared's hand, it is stocked. It has an Underworld Connections and an Erebos God of the Dead in it. Whichever one he decides to tap out for is really hard for Reid to deal with.
Well, he also might just be saying, I can still just try to win this game very easily with Pack Rats. Reid's deck is not very well suited to fight this in the absence of Detention Sphere. So a lot of different angles that Jared can take.
Yeah, if you look at the board, if Jared gets down this Erebos, it's very good. Yeah, you're right. He's just going to beat down. He sees Dissolve, Elspeth, land. Reid's going to have to rely on Elspeth to do a lot of work. Jared can play this Pack Rat. Like, he just doesn't want to get too many rats. He doesn't want them to die to the Elspeth, but this is a great board for Jared.
And a hand very well suited to beat both Dissolve and Elspeth. The Pack Rat means he never has to play into the Dissolve, and he has an evasion creature even if Elspeth gets online.
All right, and once again, we see, you know, updates from around the bracket. Chi Hoi Yim now losing game 3. He is down 2-1 to Alex Bertoncini. The winner of that will be going on to play Tom Ross in the semis.
Now, Alex's list much better suited to fight against Tom's than we saw from Brad. A full play set of Corsair Crewfix, 3 Golgari Charms in the sideboard.
All right, and in the other semifinal, Ben Friedman takes game 3. He's now up 2-1 over Logan Mize. Remember, the winner of that will play the winner of this match. It's looking like it may be Jared Boettcher. He's going to have to close out the game, though.
He has a pretty straightforward line here where he can attack with his creatures, make a rat, assume that Reid is going to play Elspeth, still get through with his Lifebane Zombie, and set up a Grey Merchant as well.
Swings with both creatures. See whether or not Reid can't trade the Mutavault. That's the thing.
He has to get to Elspeth before anything else can happen. So I think he's just got to let this come through.
Jared is putting himself at risk a little bit of a top deck Supreme Verdict, but even if that happens, he can recover with this Erebos and Underworld Connections. Jared putting him in a pretty tight squeeze.
Yeah. He has backup plans in case something goes wrong here.
And we'll see activation of Pack Rat by Jared. And what a commitment to, he's going to discard Erebos.
I think, you know, it's one of those things where, Reid here with the potential of a top deck Supreme Verdict here off this Quicken. It's one of those things where if he gets hit with a sweeper, he wants the Underworld Connections because it's a little bit faster and provides an extra bit of devotion for the Grey Merchant in his hand.
Yeah, Reid, that is a Quicken, which certainly I think would have Jared concerned. But no, it did not have the Supreme Verdict. Reid's down to 12. And yep, forced into tapping out for this Elspeth. It's going to plus. But as you said, Lifebane Zombie can hit the Elspeth. The tokens are going to be chump blocking a bit here. And Jared still does have an Underworld Connections that he could use.
Well, Jared also might just say, I'm ignoring your Elspeth and going at your life total, especially with Grey Merchant in hand.
Yeah, Temple of Malice, the draw for Jared. And you think we're going to see the connections first here so that the Grey Merchant is bigger? Or does he just need to get that Grey Merchant down? Remember, there's a dissolve once Reid untaps.
Yeah, I think the first order of business here is just going to be sending in an attack and seeing how Reid responds.
Yeah, I suppose there's a chance these cards are actually just more Pack Rats.
Yeah.
Like I said, if the rats get to 4, Elspeth could, in theory, kill them. The Lifebane Zombie is going to do a pretty good job of keeping that Elspeth low on loyalty.
The other side of this is that Jared's under no immediate threat of dying himself. So what he can do is attack. Reid makes some blocks, tries to protect his life total. He can land the Underworld Connections, assuming that with the time that he has and the connections, he can eventually find a Thoughtseize or a Duress, take the counter out of Reid's hand, and then win on the spot with the Grey Merchant.
Yeah, there's a little bit of pressure that Reid has. And that's the fact that he has 3 planar cleansings in the deck. Jared is racing the top decked planar cleansing right now. Because he got rid of the Erebos and his only other card draw is Underworld Connections, planar cleansing just solves everything for Reid.
Yeah.
So he can take a while. I don't think he can take forever. Reid just going to try to preserve. He's going to chump both the pack rats. And we see Temple of Malice to play for Jared, so gonna put the card on the bottom. And Jared actually with no interest in answering Elspeth. All the creatures were sent at Reid. Reid drops to 9. The rats were sent there too. And now he's gonna hit him from the other side. That's from the Underworld Connection side of things. This is gonna demand, it's gonna demand a planar cleansing from Reid, which is really awkward for him because he just played an Elspeth.
Yeah, and then, Jared gets to follow up with the discard spell in question. And you see he's just found Hammer Perforos as well. That's something that could bait the dissolve.
Yeah, and he does have the double red for Hammer. Reid, 7th land. It's a Temple of Enlightenment. And he's in a rough spot, and he knows it. Let's see what he can get here. It's interesting to see how players have adapted with their game plan. This blue-white control, this sphereless control, we saw Jim Davis play it last week. I myself played an event last week, thought it was pretty good. It was good against the mid-range meta. Black already adapting, and it's not even in card selection, it's just in strategy that the players are adapting.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's see what he chooses to do here.
I mean, he needs to find an answer for the Lifebane Zombie. That's going to kill Reid, even if Elspeth stays in play unchecked. So Planar Cleansing, Supreme Verdict, these are the priorities right now.
Right.
But both of those are fraught with some amount of peril here. Supreme Verdict doesn't answer the Underworld Connections and taps Reid fairly low, and Planar Cleansing takes care of the Elspeth that Reid has in play.
Well, Reid's going to plus the Elspeth. No sense in minusing it here. He has more soldiers. Remember, he does have that Dissolve in hand. We're not sure what else. His life total getting pretty low here. That Gray Merchant is actually lethal next turn. It's going to demand a Dissolve, which may clear the way for Hammer Perforos.
Well, Jared might test spell him in the other direction. He might say Hammer's good enough to dissolve here, and it leaves me with the Gray Merchant left over.
There's a risk that Reid actually just lets Hammer resolve, because if Reid's already on the out of he needs Planar Cleansing, might as well let Jared have a Hammer too. I see a draw from Jared. It's going to be, it's unknown. I believe it's a Temple.
A Nightveil Spectre, I believe, is the draw.
That's better. Absolutely, yeah. Jared still playing Nightveil Spectres, has 4 in the main. He's playing the Lifebanes out of the board. Like I said, his version, really hateful toward control decks.
Yep.
Still on Nightveil Spectres, plays 2 Rakdos returns in the main, plays Dreadbores in addition to Heroes Downfalls, has a Chandra in the main, has more returns in the board, still has the Duresses, has Hammer of Perforos. It's not a Siren of Insanity. It's not a good matchup for Reid.
But Jared still has to, do this dance of, not playing into the dissolve here because Reid getting to scry here is very dangerous, but still applying enough pressure that he can outpace Sphinx's Revelation if Reid finds it. This is very hard to do.
I feel like where Jared's going to lose points is, say we get down the road and Jared has to play a Tom Ross style deck, I think he may pay a little bit of a price for having so many of these style cards.
For sure.
And here's the test spell you mentioned. It's Hammer Perforos. Remember, Jared already drew the extra card. We'll see if it gets dissolved. And it does. It's what Jared wanted to have happen anyway. And I think it's not necessarily that Reid... So Reid had an option here, right? He can either let it resolve and try to top deck the Planar Cleansing, or he can dissolve it, mainly for the purpose of scrying one.
Yeah, I think that's the tiebreaker with all of these.
Jared's switching gears. This time Lifebane Zombie goes at Elspeth. He's going to leave the pack rats back. And it is possible we have seen a gear switch here.
Yeah. Well, I think Jared's sensing that he's going to be able to win fairly easily if he's able to just deploy his spells. And there is some risk of an Elspeth emblem coming into play here.
Yeah, Jared's got to play around cleansing. He's got to make sure that even if Reid casts cleanse, he wants to set up a board that if Reid casts cleansing, Jared will still be favored on the reload.
Yeah.
All right. Further updates on our bracket. 1v8 matchup going to the full 5 games. Chiho Yim ties it up against Alex Bertoncini. I'm cheering for him. I want to see Revelation win. Always. All right. Jace Memory Adept for Reid. It's going to +1 to draw a card. It mills a Thoughtseize off the top for Boettcher. And more soldiers join the fight. Elspeth, the Sun's champion, with her legions of soldiers, as you see there.
And I think that might have been a discard spell that Jared picked up here, and I think Reid's in some serious trouble.
It's Thoughtseize. There was another dissolve in Reid's hand. There's another Elspeth. I have to think he's going to take the dissolve.
I mean, this is lethal coming across here. Lifebane Zombie, Grey Merchant.
That'll do it. Grey Merchant, that's for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 black mana. Puts Reid down to 1. Lifebane Zombie's unblockable. That's going to swing 3 consecutive games. Jared Boettcher is on to the semifinals. For Reid, an invitational top 8, a great performance, but a tough matchup.
Yeah, we talked a lot about the 3 out of 5 format influencing this, but it didn't even get to that sort of stage. Jared with a clean 3-0, and you can see why. Just a lot of tough tools post-board for Reid to fight through. And, Reid was even able to deploy multiple Planeswalkers, which you think would help him against Mono Black. But I think Jared correctly identified that Pack Rat being a safe and powerful card in the matchup really switches the way the matchup played out. So congratulations to Jared and to Reid as well on a great weekend.
All right.